Hi, I'm Tom and welcome to my kitchen. I hope through my videos I can inspire you to cook a little bit more, or maybe just even eat a bit more. But before we get started, I'd like to talk about the three people who influenced my love of cooking the most. One, of course, my mom. And the funny story about her cooking was, as she was dating in her early 20s, some guy she was serious about, her mom said, well, why don't you have him over for dinner so the family can meet him? So my mother arranges that, and the day of the dinner, my grandmother feigns illness and tells my mom, well, you have to cook dinner now, which at that point, age 22, my mother had never cooked anything at all. So apparently she did a well enough job because she married that guy and went on to have 7 kids, me being the youngest of them. But part of that cooking experience for my mom was, imagine cooking in the 40s and 50s and early 60s, there wasn't a lot of interesting things being cooked. Chop suey in the pressure cooker, oxtail stew, which my sisters all hate. But one of the things my mother did teach me was how to cook lots of food for lots of people and make sure that nobody goes hungry. The second person who entered my cooking life, I would say, was Julia Child, because as a kid, I just found her much more entertaining than any of the cartoons. And a couple of months ago, I was watching one of her original series, first year series, and she's cooking in her own kitchen just like I am. And you can hear in the background the doorbell ring, so, mailman was there or whatever. So in case neighbors wander in here or friends, other noises, things crash, just ignore them. And then lastly, Emily Amato, who was the mom of a good friend of mine, and Emily was one of the best Italian cooks I knew. And her son really had no interest in cooking, so Emily was just grateful to have someone to pass all of her recipes along to. And so through this, we'll be looking at some of her wonderful Italian cooking as well. But for tonight, we're going to stick with something quite simple, a chicken. But the difference is we're going to cook this at a high temperature of 450 degrees. So the skin's going to get really crispy and and the potatoes, you're going to love those. So let's just take a look at what we have here. So have the chicken, and this has been sitting uncovered in the refrigerator for overnight, or you can just do it all day long. It dries out the skin, adheres better, it's going to crisp up much better. Then we also have potatoes. So I have these little potatoes, and depending on the size, like this little guy, we're just going to cut that in half. The little larger ones we're just going to slice into maybe 1/4-inch slices or so. Not much to do here. But then if you're in the store and you're lucky to find heirloom potatoes, like those ones that you see are a little bit more finger-shaped, fingerling potatoes, they might be purple, red, yellow, white. You could also use those. So I have about 1.5 pounds of potato sliced. We're just going to add about a teaspoon of salt to that. Some fresh pepper. Then I have for my garden about a good 1.5 tablespoons, 2 tablespoons of fresh thyme. To that, I have a little saucepan here, mini saucepan of 2 tablespoons of butter. And about 1.5 tablespoons or so of olive oil. Just stir this all around. Potatoes are done. Now the chicken doesn't take much care at all. You have a chicken, we're just going to tie up its little legs. Keep the chicken together. Just a simple knot here. And then basically you could put some herbs like thyme inside the cavity, rosemary, oregano. You can also put some of those onto your potatoes as well. This is just going to get a little sprinkling of sugar, not sugar, a little sprinkling of salt. Get some of that into that cavity as well. So all of this we're going to put over into the 450 degree oven. So you can use any heavy type of pot, such as, you know, a cast iron aluminum, or I actually just have a regular big cast iron skillet, pot, saucepan, whatever you want to call it, in the oven already. So that's been heating up to the 450 degrees. I'd say that's about 4.5 inches deep. We're going to put just a little olive oil in there. I'm going to get my tongs to put the chicken in, because that pan is very hot. It's going to sear the bottom of the chicken pretty well, so we get a nice crispy bottom as well. And we'll put that in. We'll take these potatoes, put the potatoes all around. So I just want you to think about that. We have this wonderful plump chicken, nice and big, fatty. We've got all these delicious little potatoes, and those potatoes now are going to cook in that wonderful chicken fat. So let's just put this in the oven. And we'll set the timer for about an hour, and we'll start taking its temperature. See you back in about an hour. Timer's gone off. It's been just a bit over an hour. So let's take the chicken out of the oven. Ooh, ah. And let's come take a little close-up up here. Beautiful chicken. Nice and crispy. So let me go get a carving board. So what I like to do is I have a regular baking sheet that I can put cutting board on top, so that any of the juices that run off stay on the cutting board and don't go onto the counter. And whenever I work with any meat products, I always use red, because that reminds me that that could have had raw meat, so don't use it later to cut vegetables on unless you've thoroughly cleaned it. Let's just take the chicken out. Nice crispy bottom, as promised. Put that there. We can check the temperature, but I'm pretty sure, looking at it, thigh is up to about 180, so I'm going to temp this for a bit. That'll continue cooking as it rests. And then we're going to check on the potatoes. They've been cooking in all that lovely chicken fat. And let me just see if I can do this. Look at that. Nice and crispy potato. So if those aren't done enough to your liking, you can always put these back in the oven. Set it maybe a little bit higher even, but these look pretty good to me. So I'm just going to put them into that bowl, and then we're going to be ready for dinner. In about 5 minutes, I'll carve that chicken. Anyway, thanks for joining us. And I think we're going to have a fall favorite coming up next. Taking a look at some squash-filled raviolis. See you next time. Bye-bye.